What's up, Godzilla fans? Well, you know what? You might be a Godzilla fan now if you've watched Godzilla Minus One and, of course, his legacy of movies. But you know what? I don't know if you're going to be a Godzilla fan if you're watching Monarchy Legacy of Monsters. Danny, I'd much rather go back to the past 10 minutes where you and I were BSing about Godzilla and Movie Bob and all that other stuff versus talking about this show. Because honestly, I'm gonna have to pull a lot out of my ass to even make this a 5-minute discussion.
Yeah, we opened the link and we started talking about Rebel Moon and Zack Snyder, and that we were discussing his filmography, and we were pretty much doing anything possible to not start live recording because this is exactly what I hoped did not happen with this. Yep. This was the filler episode to fill all filler episodes. and we talked last week. I was in my car in my garage because my daughter was having a sleepover for her birthday, and I didn't want to be loud and wake up a bunch of angry teenagers. So I went down to my car and I said that I genuinely really liked episode 6 of this show. And I loved the appearance that we got of Godzilla. I love the multiple timelines. I love the focus on specific characters, which really made you want to see how those characters from the past now act in the future and how they influence other characters, the progeny of those characters that we're focusing on. And then we get this episode, which I almost, from the title, rolled my eyes. I think it's Will the Real May Please Stand Up?
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I went, oh no, she's the one character we haven't done like a background episode of.
Yeah.
And so this episode got rid of all the timeline stuff. We don't get any of our 1950s Monarch crew. We left off with a pretty great cliffhanger last week of Shaw, Wyatt Russell's character, basically by him traveling to Japan to be with Dr. Mora, he screwed up and Monarch was given to like pencil neck geek number 2 of the military.
Right.
And like that was like a cliffhanger that I wanted to see followed up on, and forget about that. We never even sniffed the 1950s timeline. And instead we got 45 minutes of really May/Cora's background with this job that she takes at this tech firm. And look, I'll just come out and say they really set up this entire episode to do a big reveal that AET becomes Apex. That was the big, oh my God, oh shit, I can't. And I if you would have been in my room at 1:30 in the morning, yes, Pete, if you would have been in my room at 1:30 in the morning, when I watched this, my eyes would have rolled to the back of my head faster than the Undertaker saying "Rest in peace" in the mid-90s. Okay.
Oh.
And if you're wondering why did I watch this at 1 in the morning, it's because last night is the first night of finally my school semester came to an end. I'm officially on vacation, so I celebrated my vacation by coming home at like 8:30 and passing out and sleeping until midnight.
Yeah.
And then waking up at midnight, seeing a whole bunch of messages from you and Brian and going, all right, well, I'm up now. I might as well watch Monarch. And one of the messages was like something from you that was like, well, it's got to be better than this Monarch episode.
Oh, Danny, I feel so bad for you that the first thing of your celebration of being off for winter break is that you have to watch this fucking thing. Like,
I purposely am drinking out of my a natural history museum
Oh,
dinosaur mug
that's cool. It's
because
cool.
there are more monsters on this coffee cup than there were in this show.
Yes. So you know what? Let's keep this trend going of not wanting to talk about this fucking lame ass episode. Um, at the I don't know if the Alamo Draft House by you does this, but the Alamo Draft House, I'm assuming that like nationwide they do the same thing. The one by me, they have the don't talk, don't text thing, right? And there's a Godzilla one where it's like stop motion. You've seen that? Okay, okay. So there's like the stop motion thing where they have like a big Godzilla and he's playing with toys, and there's a little baby Godzilla and a little toy Godzilla, and they interact. And I've seen that fucking thing too many times where it's just like, oh, here comes this fucking thing again. I've seen that like 10, 15 times, right? Every time I go to the movies. I'd
Better
rather
than
watch
Nicole Kidman. It's better than Nicole Kidman sitting in an empty theater.
But Danny, I would rather like just back to back Nicole Kidman in the theater and that Godzilla clip for 42 minutes than watch this fucking episode that we just watched. Like, I'd hate to admit it, but like, you know, when you watch as many movies and shows as we do, there's times where you're like looking at your phone and stuff because you're like, oh, well, I do have this other thing in my life, like bills to pay and shit. And like, I have to watch this show. And I was fucking just like playing games of Hearthstone and stuff while this is on because I was like, I don't give a shit about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Listen, I'm all for shitting on this episode, especially coming down off of the high that I was on more than you from last week.
Yeah.
But I think we both agree that last week's episode was the best episode since the first three that we really liked.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But now we're 7 episodes in, and it's been 3 good episodes, 3 bad episodes, and one kind of good episode. I liked it. I would go 4-3 good. You'd probably go 3-3-1. Like,
yeah.
And we're 3 episodes left in the season, and at this point, I'm like there has to be something, right? Like that explosion that goes off at the end. I'm assuming that was like an opening to the Hollow Earth, maybe.
Yes.
And so, and all of a sudden in this episode, Kurt Russell is acting like the bad guy. I don't know if like his mission was to be bad, but he certainly acted like a bad guy in this. Like he acted like Hans Gruber at one point. So I really, if this was episode 4, I would just say, you know what, let's just give up on this series.
Right.
I'm more intrigued as to just what the series is going to do.
Yes.
But like, again, this was an episode where in a show called Monarch Legacy of Monsters, there was a monster on screen for maybe 2 seconds, and it was a monster we had already seen, and it does nothing.
Yeah.
And like, Kiersey Clemons is a good actress, and the acting in this show isn't terrible. It's just like I can't imagine sitting in the writer's room. So this is what I think about sometimes. I think about the creators of the show sitting in the writer's room and saying, okay, we're making a show that is set in the Monsterverse with Godzilla as the marketing tool. We're building to another Godzilla Kong movie. This movie takes place between Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Right.
So we have all of this stuff to play with, all of these toys that we could play with.
Right.
And then somebody in the writer's room goes, you know, this character of May, what if we do 45 minutes on her? and that somehow gets approved as like, yes, let's do a monsterless episode of our monster show in the Monsterverse.
Yeah.
And let's focus completely on a character that's not even family related to the story that's going on. Like, you can make the argument with the other 2 characters. They, at least they're Randas. They are family tied to Monarch.
Right.
And in the alternate timeline, not alternate timeline, but in the 50s timeline, we know their grandparents.
Right.
So we know for a fact they're important somehow. She's just kind of brought in randomly. Like, and now it's like I start to play this game in my head where it's like, if Kitaro is not taking a picture randomly in a Japanese alley that stops May as she walks by, they never talk to each other, and this character's never in the show.
Right.
That's
really
how
good
random her connection to this show is. She stopped when a stranger took a photograph, and instead of just continuing to walk on, she decided to stop and talk to him, and they flirted and ended up hooking up.
Yeah.
And that is her connection to this universe. The fact that she worked for this tech company and like basically gave them a computer virus to eliminate their code, which forced her to go on the run, that is all nonsensical to this plot. She stopped for a photograph.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that she ended up hooking up with the one person in Japan who is connected to the Godzilla Monarch universe.
Oh.
And it also just turns out that the company she's fleeing has a, minor connection to Monarch and they're going to spawn the tech company that I think is the ones that end up creating Mecha Godzilla in Godzilla v Kong.
Correct.
Which was one of the dumber movies I've ever seen. Which
well, that's saying a lot, man. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were talking about Zack Snyder before we came on, and I've always said Godzilla v Kong is Batman v Superman, where Mecha Godzilla just happens to be Doomsday.
Yeah.
Forcing them to. The only thing the movie's missing is a Wonder Woman. They even have a, save Mothra, moment.
Oh my God.
The movie is ridiculous. The human characters are stupid as all hell, but it's fun monster fighting at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And like this whole episode sets up for me to go, oh, Apex, that's the company that makes Mega Godzilla. Oh my God. And at that point, I was done. I was just like,
yeah.
If I hadn't napped for 3 hours between 9 and midnight, I would not have watched this show this week.
Oh, man. Well, okay. So Godzilla, the one with Bryan Cranston, is from 2014. So by the time this new King Kong and Godzilla comes out, it's going to be 10 years of this monster verse, right? So we've had Godzilla, we've had Kong Skull Island, we've had King of the Monsters, Godzilla v Kong, or whatever the fuck it's called, and then this show, right? And then we're going to get this Kong Empire, whatever the fuck it's called. So 6 things in 10 years. And honestly, out of all of that, there's really good visuals in each of those movies. There's even, I dare say, exciting sequences in each of those movies. But none of them have like emotionally captured me. I don't know if that's correct grammar, or like, got me invested really, where I'm like, oh, I really care about this character. It all just kind of comes down to, I want to just watch some crazy monster shit, and I'm just looking at it, and it literally could just be like an effects reel or like a trailer for a video game and nothing to it. I'm just looking at it, but it's not like, oh, I care about Alexander Skarsgård's character in Kong v Godzilla, or whatever the fuck it's called.
I didn't even remember he was in that movie.
Yeah.
I remember Vera Farmiga as a laughable villain.
Right.
Like hilarious villain whose entire angle, I think, is we're going to wake all the Titans up to destroy humankind so that we can rebuild society.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Then there's I remember Samuel L. Jackson as like a crazy military guy in Kong Skull Island. I remember Shea Wiggum having a hilarious death where he thinks he's going to like save everybody by killing himself. And then like the monster just like flicks him aside.
Yes.
The
Yes.
problem with all of those movies you just mentioned is like you said, amazing visuals. Nobody's taking away how fucking awesome this new version of Godzilla looks.
Right.
From Gareth Edwards 2014 until now, that Godzilla is fucking great.
Yeah.
And I still don't like that King Kong is 2 million feet tall. I'm not a big fan of that. I've never been a Kong guy, but the monsters in Kong Skull Island look good. Nobody's denying the special effects. The biggest problem, and you touched on it, they cannot come to a balance of human to monster characters.
Right.
It's either way too much human melodrama that we don't care about, focusing on the wrong humans. Case in point, 2014, the movie that basically sets this show up,
Right.
teases Bryan Cranston at his absolute post Breaking Bad peak,
Yeah.
sets him up to be a main character, this like crazed scientist who
Right.
has a reason to hate the monsters and want revenge and want answers.
Right.
And instead, he's completely randomly killed off about 40 minutes in so that we
Right.
could focus on Aaron Taylor Johnson,
Right.
who is not Anya Taylor-Joy, and that really is his biggest problem. I don't understand. Like, Godzilla 2014 is a movie that it could have been 35 minutes long.
Right.
It could have easily given us the beginning with Bryan Cranston. We could have gotten Ken Watanabe going, "Let them fight," and then it could have given us the fight scene.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and again, you said it at the beginning. The biggest thing that continues to work against this show is the timing of the release of Godzilla Minus One.
Right.
Because Godzilla Minus One not only has the best Godzilla stuff we've ever seen, it has the best human drama attached to it.
Right. Right.
And it's
right.
like, oh, that's how you do it.
Right.
That's how you do a human story in a monster movie.
Right.
Instead of doing a human movie with, oh, by the way, there's monsters, or doing a monster movie with, oh, by the way, there's some humans, which
Right.
is what these MonsterVerse films and shows feel like.
Right. Have you
When
ever seen?
this show is at its best, in these 4 episodes that we've liked, episodes 1, 2, and 3, and episode 6,
Yeah.
it has gotten that mix the best. It has given us the characters from the past, excuse me, the characters from the present. It's given us some really great monster stuff. And I'm like, okay, that is the sweet spot we need to continue to get back to. But then it follows it up with 45 minutes
Right.
of human character. Like,
Yeah.
and it's baffling to me. Again, how did that leave the writer's room? How did they say,
Right.
okay, in the next episode of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, we're going to do 47 minutes on this character called May.
Right.
We're going to get into her background. We're going to learn all about her. And there's not going to be any monsters.
Right. Right.
Like,
right.
who are you making the show for?
I'm not sure exactly, honestly. So we've mentioned how Matt Fraction is one of the producers on the show, one of the showrunners, right? And Matt Fraction, he is the one that made the comic of Hawkeye that like they based the Disney Plus show on, but the comic is like 1,000 times better than the Disney Plus show. It's like really, really good. It's a very significant comic that a lot of people refer to often. It's this amazing book. So he's made that, but he's also made a ton of other things. He's famous for making a comic called Sex Criminals, where people have like power from sex and it like helps them rob banks and stuff. Interesting stuff. I mean, he's written a ton of Marvel stuff, DC stuff. He's written a Jimmy Olsen comic. Interesting guy, makes random interesting things. To me, it doesn't make sense that he is one of the people behind this show because I feel like he must be being restrained or something because it's like he
Does
can't. Go ahead.
are there individual comics in his Hawkeye like run where Hawkeye just sits at a table and talks with his friends for 45 minutes at a time, and you end the comic and you're like, wow, he didn't even put on the Hawkman outfit once.
Well, I mean, that is the thing about Hawkeye, the comic that he wrote, is that it's
Hawkeye, sorry.
right. It's him living in an apartment building, and there's other people and stuff, and there is a big focus on the people in the building, but it's always interesting stuff. And there's like ancillary characters that got introduced in that are interesting. There's a dog that's become kind of a big thing in Marvel, where his name is Lucky the pizza dog. It's a dog that's missing one
Oh
eye.
yeah.
Right, and he's in the show and stuff. Kate Bishop, who was like introduced in Young Avengers, but then she becomes a big part in this comic. It's just that there's quirky dialogue, there's quirky characters in that comic, and that's just one example of his stuff. He's written probably hundreds of comics at this point, and it's just like this show. It's just like, did they try? Like, there's that one guy who works for Monarch who this is how much I don't care about the show, is the guy who he's the first shot in the show is him coming out of the sand. I don't even know that fucking guy's name, but they show him every episode. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Him.
Okay, yes, him. So him's coming out of the sand, and they do it kind of like a funny thing, as if it's like Godzilla emerging from the sand, but it's just this asshole. And they try to make him seem funny. He makes some jokes and stuff. But I'll tell you, Danny, the lowest part for the show, the part where I groaned, even worse than the fucking reveal of Apex, was when his boss is making that speech about Monarch to like the world. And they're playing this emotional music. The music is swelling. And I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking lame. Like, she was like, we live in a world where, the things that we love, like our family and our lives are. But unfortunately, it's a world where there's also giant monsters. It was just like it was, she didn't say that exactly, but it was that dumb.
We're living in a society.
Yeah. where there's Godzillas and Mothras. But I think, just to kind of go back to what you were saying before, like, all of these movies are kind of subpar. They're like 70s. If we're ranking up to 100, they're like 70s, or they're 7.5s or something at best. Kong Skull Island has some stuff that gets in the 80s, 90s range. And then there's stuff in the Kong one and King of Monsters that are high too. But overall, everything is like just satisfactory, I think. And some of it is below satisfactory. They've hired like horror directors, interesting people for the movies. I mean, Gareth Edwards, the creator, that was like one of my favorite movies this year. And he was on the first one.
I have that saved on Vudu. I rented it. It's going to be, now that I'm on vacation, I'll finally get to that.
Yeah, I really wish you could have seen that on the big screen, because it was a spectacle.
Me too. That was a miss for me on the big screen. But like Michael Dougherty, who directed Krampus and Trick or Treat, which are Trick or Treat's one of my all-time favorites. Really like Krampus, and I thought like he would have such a great handle on the monsters. And again, they look great in his movies, but the movies overall just feel in a similar way to maybe James Wan doing Aquaman.
Yeah, but see, okay, so I actually just saw that, right? And I actually like Aquaman 2 better than most of the stuff that we've just discussed, because like it is stupid as hell, but still there's something to it. There's some, huge.
I didn't see it, but like Momoa just has so much charm to him.
Right.
And the first movie, the one thing I'll say about the first movie is, as a standalone DC movie, I enjoyed it. And again, it was that stupidity of like, there's an octopus playing drums underwater. That's funny. He really just, it was like the Little Mermaid on steroids. And I loved that. Like, you put anything under the water and I'm going to enjoy it. But yeah, it says a lot. We're 24 minutes in, 25 minutes in. We have basically found so many other things to talk about than this show. So why don't we just put a plug in this recording and get ready for next week because we have a big Saturday next week. I'm very excited about Saturday next week. And it may be causing you some stress because it's basically you're off this week, right?
Yes,
Yes, we're all off this week. It's the holiday season. Today is my, the most special day of the year for me. Happy Festivus to everybody. I'm going to be competing in feats of strength with my family later and airing our grievances.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have Christmas on Monday and we're going to be off next week. But Pete and I will be recording a little earlier than usual this year our top 10 horror movies of 2023. I'm very excited about that. I've been watching a few things. I'm going to have now that I actually have some time that I don't have to be at work. I'm going to probably as soon as we're done recording, you might recognize my new Carrie shirt. But I will be doing some short reviews of a couple new movies that I just watched, including a really awesome horror anthology and a really fun holiday horror film, both of which are streaming, available for rent or purchase on, I think, Vudu and Prime and all those other good channels. So
Nice.
that's what I have coming up. And I'm just excited to spend time this week going through my list of 2023 horror movies. I don't know if this year for horror was as great as last year's, but I do think that there was this might sound as insulting, but I swear it's not. This year there was a lot of quantity, whereas I felt like last year there was a lot of quality up top. This year there's been a lot of quantity of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if for me, aside from maybe one or two movies, nothing like leaps out as like that has to go in the top 5. But there's a lot of movies that I look at and go, oh, that could make the top 10.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's going to be a lot harder to whittle down. Whereas normally I'm like, no, these 5 movies have to go in right away. And then I only have 5 spots left. This year, I'm probably going to have 8 or 9 spots to fill in the top 10. And I probably am going to have about 25 movies to pick from to go like, oh, okay, which do I want to actually rewatch more and more? And I'll work down the list that way. But I'm always excited to film that. We don't usually do that list until the end of January, but I feel like
at least, yeah, like
I'm
February
starting to see everybody put out their lists.
Yeah.
And I kind of have list envy. So I feel like let's get ours out as like a New Year's present to people who watch this channel.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, Danny is friggin' doing the segue to get out of the episode. That's how bad Monarch must have been. Danny is segueing to himself. Oh, Danny, what do you have coming up on the channel? It's like my thing. He's just like, I'm so fucking done of Monarch. Oh, what do I have coming up on the channel? It's just, so yeah, but it was a turn. So on that note, Merry Christmas, everyone, because I think that this will be the last video before actually Christmas will have happened, right? By the time what the fuck? This comes out on Monday. Monday's Christmas Eve, right?
No, Monday's Christmas.
Monday's Christmas. Here's your Christmas gift, guys. A steaming bowl of boring ass Monarch. Happy Christmas. We'll see you all soon. We love you.